Welcome, friends. You're watching the Ruslan Belov channel. And today, we have a genuinely packed episode because the volume of events that have piled up would be enough for several separate broadcasts. The Ukrainian front continues to fracture simultaneously across multiple directions, while in the Middle East, the situation has moved right up to the line beyond, which what we're looking at is no longer tension. It's full-scale war, with unpredictable consequences for the entire global economy. Before we get into it, a sincere request: please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notification. This isn't a formality. YouTube is actively suppressing this kind of content. Military analytical material is routinely placed into shadow bans, and the algorithm simply stops showing episodes even to long-time subscribers. The bell is the only reliable way around that. Hit it right now, so you don't miss a single important update. Now, to the briefing. Sumy direction. Ryaznoye on the verge of encirclement. Let's start with what is arguably the most dynamic sector over the past 24 hours. The Sumy direction. Here, Russian units aren't simply advancing. They are methodically constructing an operational trap around the settlement of Ryaznoye, and judging by the latest map corrections, that trap is very nearly shut. According to data from pro-Ukrainian cartographic services, sources that, as a rule, tend to understate losses rather than exaggerate them, Russian units have successfully flanked Ryaznoye from the southwest. The maneuver was executed through poorly defended flanks, and Russian forces are now consolidating near the entrance road from the direction of Myropolye, specifically from the Mezonivka side. When you add to this the information from several days ago about Russian unit activity near Tarotutino, the northern road appears to be cut, or on the verge of being cut. What does this mean in practical terms? Ukrainian units in Ryaznoye find themselves in operational encirclement. Not a full tactical cauldron in the classical sense. There are still potential withdrawal routes, but those routes are narrowing by the hour. The only realistic option for the Ukrainian armed forces right now is an organized retreat westward toward Chmelivka. Before that corridor closes entirely, the situation will only deteriorate. Supply lines are compromised, logistics are under constant FPV drone strikes, and reinforcements are being intercepted before they even reach the front. Simultaneously, Russian unit activity is being recorded near Veliki Prikil and on the Ukroyedsk axis. These movements currently resemble reconnaissance in force and flank pressure rather than full assault. But they fit perfectly into the broader operational logic. Create as many pressure points as possible so the adversary cannot concentrate reserves at any single one. In parallel, footage of combat activity has emerged from the Myropolye area. Ukrainian FPV operators striking Russian soldiers operating directly within the town's boundaries. This constitutes documentary confirmation of Russian control over the settlement. Recall, several days ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense announced advances here, but without video evidence. Today, that evidence appeared. Particularly worth noting is the situation along Highway T-1901 connecting Sumy and Myropolye. Russian units are already striking along this route, intercepting vehicles, personnel, and reinforcements attempting to reach the front line. Published footage shows Ukrainian fighters on quad bikes heading toward the fighting, and being taken out by drone strikes almost immediately. It is a stark illustration of just how difficult it now is to maintain meaningful logistical support for this sector. And this is where the bigger picture comes into focus. A number of Ukrainian journalists and analysts are now writing openly that if Russian units continue pushing westward, toward Velika Rybitsia and the T-1901, the city of Sumy could face a genuine threat of semi-encirclement. This is not panic, and it is not propaganda. It is military mathematics. The evidence is accumulating that the Sumy direction has become one of the primary strategic priorities for Russian command. Kharkiv sector. The lull before the breakthrough? On the Kharkiv direction, no visible territorial changes were recorded over the past 24 hours. However, there is one warning signal that deserves particular attention. In recent days, there has been a sharp increase in the intensity of strikes against a large forested area west of the Siversky Donets River. This forest, one of the largest in the northeastern Kharkiv direction, is effectively the main fortified zone for the Ukrainian armed forces along the state border. Ukrainian units have made expert use of the wooded terrain for concealed movement, position construction, and flank protection. The increased frequency of strikes, combined with the growing volume of footage being published from this sector, strongly suggests that Russian forces are preparing to attempt a breakthrough here. If this forest area is taken, an operational corridor opens toward the northeastern approaches to Kharkiv itself. For now, this is a trend, but it is a very telling one. Kupansk Uzlovyi, fighting in the city center. The Kupiansk direction continues to confirm what has been said for several weeks now. The battle for Kupiansk Uzlovyi is a brutal urban grinding match with no pauses. Today, video evidence emerged confirming the presence of Russian units in the central and eastern parts of Kupiansk Uzlovyi. The footage captures Russian soldiers near specific buildings within the city, as well as individual firefight episodes along Volodymyr Sosyura Street. This evidence is significant on two levels. On one hand, it confirms that Russian units are genuinely present deep within the settlement. On the other, it demonstrates that the eastern Oskil bridgehead is still holding, and Ukrainian fighters continue to resist in the western part of the city. The battle for Kupiansk continues, and there is no end in sight. Slavyansk direction, Kryva Luka, under threat of encirclement. On the Slavyansk sector, another potential trap has taken shape, this time in the area of Oziorna, Kryva Luka, and Kaliki. Russian command appears to have set the objective of straightening the front line along this stretch. To that end, powerful strikes using TOS-1A Solntsepek thermobaric rocket systems have been delivered against the forest areas covering the supply and withdrawal routes for Ukrainian units in the Kryva Luka area. The immediate objective is to reach Donetska Street in the southern part of Oziorna. Why does this matter critically? Because those forest areas are the only reliable overhead cover protecting the logistics of the Ukrainian units holding the strategic heights around Kryva Luka. If Russian forces succeed in occupying those forest positions, the Ukrainian garrison on the heights will be in complete encirclement with no prospect of relief. Another potential catastrophe. And once again in a place where the public maps showed nothing but silence just a few days ago. Constantinovka direction. A strike at the heart of the defense. Constantinovka is today arguably the most painful point for Ukrainian command when looking at the situation from an operational level. According to data from Western analysts and open-source intelligence, the greatest concentration of Russian motorized units across the entire Donetsk front has been assembled in and around Constantinovka. This is not a coincidence. Such concentration is an unambiguous signal of a large-scale offensive in preparation, aimed at straightening the front line along the Sofiivka, Toretsk, Konstantinovka, Verkhnoutoretske, Chasiv Yar axis, and the results are already visible. Comparing the map from April 19th with today's, April 20th, significant changes in the situation are evident within just 24 hours. Russian units have advanced in both the southern and eastern parts of Konstantinovka. The headline development from this direction today: Russian forces have reportedly brought highways N32 and N20 in the southern part of the city under full control. The significance of this is difficult to overstate. This route is not just one road among many. It is a critical logistics artery that formed a supply chain. Pokrovsk, Mirnograd, Novoekonomichne, Konstantinovka, Bakhmut. In practical terms, this corridor was sustaining supply to a substantial part of the Ukrainian Donetsk grouping. Its loss severely complicates Ukrainian logistics, while for Russian forces it opens additional opportunities to accelerate the tempo of operations within the city itself. In the eastern part of the city, pro-Ukrainian cartographers have added infiltration zones and grey zones, which is, as a rule, an indirect acknowledgement that the situation there has slipped out of Ukrainian control. At the same time, footage of Ukrainian FPV drone strikes against Russian positions in the eastern and southeastern sectors has been published, which, on one level, confirms active resistance, but on another confirms that the line of contact has already passed through the eastern quarters of Konstantinovka and is approaching the city center. Pokrovsk direction, Horodivka almost taken. From the Pokrovsk sector, a modest but telling update. Corrections are being noted in the northern part of Hrodivka, and all indications are that this settlement has now almost entirely passed under Russian control. Official confirmation from the Russian Ministry of Defense is likely to follow within hours or days. To recall, the battle for Hrodivka has been ongoing since late 2025. The prolonged resistance put up by Ukrainian forces made this one of the most drawn-out engagements on the Pokrovsk axis. That makes its apparent conclusion all the more significant. Zaporizhzhia sector. Lightning breakthrough near Alexandrograd. The Zaporizhzhia direction delivered what is arguably the most unexpected news of the day. At least that is how Russian sources are framing it, and the near-complete silence from the Ukrainian side speaks for itself. Several days ago, Russian units launched a rapid offensive in the Alexandrograd area. Based on available information, that offensive culminated in a breakthrough of Ukrainian positions. Without reducing tempo after the breakthrough, Russian units then forced the Vovcha River and began establishing a bridgehead on its western bank, in the area of the settlement of Lizna, situated between Velika, Mikhailivka, and Havrilivka. The assault on Lizna, according to available reports, began today. The strategic value of this bridgehead is self-evident. If successfully consolidated, it will allow Russian units to attack Velika Mikhailivka from the northeast and Havrilivka from the south, creating simultaneous threats in two directions and potentially enveloping the Ukrainian defensive line across this stretch. The information picture is instructive. Russian sources are covering events in this area with maximum intensity, while the Ukrainian side has maintained near-total silence. In the context of the modern information war, this particular combination is arguably one of the most reliable indicators that the situation is genuinely developing in a critical direction for the Ukrainian armed forces. Middle East, the hot phase is beginning. We now turn to events that may ultimately reshape the global order far more dramatically than anything unfolding on the Ukrainian front. The Middle East, where a scenario capable of breaking global energy markets is playing out across the Persian Gulf, the Strait of Hormuz, the Gulf of Oman, and the Arabian Sea. The disposition over the past several days has shaped up as follows. The United States has concentrated up to 2 carrier strike groups in the region. China responded by deploying destroyers and frigates, and, according to some sources, submarines as well. Iran, for its part, has sealed the Strait of Hormuz with dozens of fast attack craft, turning it into a zone of Iranian physical control. 3 of the world's most powerful naval forces now stand face-to-face in one of the most strategically vital waterways on the planet. And it was precisely at the moment this critical mass was reached that the first actions crossed the line from diplomacy into something else entirely. Yesterday, an Iranian tanker named Tauska was transiting toward the Persian Gulf. One detail here is easy to miss but important. The tanker's route ran not away from Iranian ports but toward them, meaning the vessel was sailing in ballast, empty, heading to take on cargo. Nevertheless, an American destroyer intercepted the tanker directly on the declared blockade line, the very line the U.S. Secretary of Defense had shown on a map days earlier as the boundary that vessels connected to Iranian ports were forbidden to cross. The tanker's engine room was hit with machine gun fire. The vessel was disabled and forced to stop. American forces then conducted a boarding operation, searching and detaining the ship. Tehran's response was swift. Iran officially withdrew from the second round of negotiations with the United States scheduled to take place in Pakistan. That was the first counterstrike, diplomatic but unambiguous. A military response, according to Iranian statements, is in preparation. Meanwhile, satellite imagery is capturing a scene that would have been difficult to imagine just a few months ago. Dozens of Iranian fast attack craft maintaining a complete blockade of the Strait of Hormuz. Throughout all of Sunday, not a single vessel crossed it. Not one. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply passes, is at a standstill. Financial markets reacted instantly and brutally. On Friday, oil closed at $83 per barrel. Monday morning, at the very first tick of trading, a gap, no gradual movement, straight to $90 per barrel. 7% over the weekend. That is not a correction, and it is not speculative froth. That is the market pricing in the real prospect of Hormuz remaining closed for an indefinite period. Further escalation will push prices higher still. Two additional factors are compounding the situation, each alarming in isolation. Together, they form a genuinely dangerous picture. First, a number of Gulf states that had been operating within the pro-American coalition have notified Washington that they may begin settling oil transactions in Chinese yuan. For the dollar as the world's reserve currency and for American dominance in global energy trade, this is a blow whose consequences are difficult even to theorize about. Allies who spent years sheltering under the American security umbrella are signaling clearly that they have alternatives. Second, the United States has announced its intention to conduct inspections of Chinese vessels as part of its blockade operations in the Strait of Hormuz area. This is a direct provocation aimed at Beijing. China already has naval forces present in the region. An incident involving a Chinese warship would transform this from an Iran-US conflict into a potential trigger for a confrontation of an entirely different magnitude. As for the immediate hours ahead, the Bush Carrier Strike Group has reportedly rounded Madagascar and is rapidly closing on the operational area. When the Bush and the Lincoln are within range of combined operations, which by some estimates could occur as early as Tuesday evening, April 21st, two full carrier strike groups will be able to operate in tandem. According to sources, that is the most likely moment for the active phase of military operations to begin. Simultaneously, a resumption of hostilities in southern Lebanon is anticipated. You are watching, in real time, the formation of a new historical inflection point. That brings today's episode to a close. The picture on April 20th, 2026 is this: simultaneous advances across multiple Ukrainian front sectors and an accelerating crisis in the Middle East that within the next 24 to 48 hours risks tipping into open armed conflict involving several major world powers. Stay on top of the developments. Tomorrow we'll have a great deal to discuss. If the episode was useful, leave a like. It helps the channel. Subscribe and don't forget the bell. Without it, YouTube simply will not show you the next episode. Thank you for being with us. Until next time.